You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's shrm.org.
Hello, everybody. This is Bob Goodwin, president of Career Club, joined by my good friend, the president and CEO of SHRM, Johnny C. Taylor Jr., for another episode of the WorkWire. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing really well, my man. Entering summer, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, you're showing off your athletic bona fides in the background. What's that all about?
Let me tell you. So, of course, everyone who knows I'm a proud Miami Hurricane. And I, of course, during my tenure, had a little bit to do with the football team, not as a football player. Anyone who knows me also knows I'm not particularly athletic, but I was the academic coordinator for the University of Miami football team. So I as a result, they gave me a jersey in my honor. That was probably as close as I was ever going to get to a football jersey.
No, that's cool. So, as always, part of our thing here on the WorkWire is not being afraid to jump into the deep end of the pool. And there's a topic that I think we both have some passion around, which is a recent development with the FTC where they have essentially banned non-compete agreements. So a few weeks ago, they were saying, hey, this is our intention, but we're going to do some more listening, but with the intent of implementing on September 4th, I think, or thereabouts, early in September of this year. My understanding is that they're moving forward. And there's implications. There's implications for companies. There's implications, obviously, for employees. And I'm looking forward to tackling that with you.
It's a big one to tackle, and let's go. What do you
think?
Because I always...
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and this will be counterintuitive probably, is from the company's perspective, they make huge investments in innovation, intellectual property, training of people, and basically creating competitive advantages for themselves because we operate in a free market economy. And so it's kind of like, let the best man win. And when an employee who has got very proprietary insight into strategy, technology, other work processes, whatever it might be, leaves and goes to a competitor, a company should rightfully feel threatened by that because they were paying for services and have a level of understanding that those are their assets and they're not portable to that employee. Fair enough?
I'm so proud of you. I didn't expect.
That's why I'm leading with this. Come on now.
Because normally I'm going after why the employee. Dude. I love this. Come on, Bob. Look at here.
However,
I knew it was coming. I knew it was too good to be true.
I know. But the cure in some cases is worse than the disease or the threat of the disease. So, I wrote a post on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, right after this happened, and I had Mel Gibson from Braveheart, freedom, and the idea that a company could lay me off and also tell me where I can and cannot work is like so counterintuitive to me. I don't know how I could ever make that argument. Like, you don't get to work here, but I also get to tell you where else you don't get to work. It's like, what? Like, what world does that work? But at the same time, the idea but you bring with you certain things that we would consider really valuable. Well, either compensate me for put me on garden leave for a year and compensate me for it, or let's just really kind of tease through what's the difference between a non-compete, a non-disclosure, a non-solicitation, right? So the company is protected appropriately, but at the same time, and there's a couple of numbers I want to read and then I'll be quiet, I promise.
Please.
Is the FTC estimates the wages could increase by nearly $300 billion per year as workers can move to positions that better match their skills and demand higher compensation. That's good for the economy. Then
Oh,
the FTC estimates banning non-competes could lead to over 8,500 additional new businesses created annually and an 11 to 19% increase in new patents over 10 years as entrepreneurial activity rises. So things that should be very much net positives to the economy. So it seems like to me, one, the feds are kind of catching up to what a lot of states have already been, enacting and making this now just sort of the law of the land instead of, it being, at the state level. So I'm empathetic to the needs of the company. Yet at the same time, I believe this is a huge net positive for the labor market and for the economy writ large to not rein people in from where they can work and what they can do. So, speech over. What do you think?
so first of all, and most importantly, this is likely to get tied up in the courts. I don't guess that September this is going to happen.
You
The
don't?
FTC, no, no. We've already seen a flurry of lawsuits. It's
Chamber of
likely
Commerce, I think, U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
SHRM
Mhm.
has signed on amicus briefs on this. Uh, but I'll tell you why. So I don't want anyone to say, "Oh my gosh, it's just pro management." I knew SHRM would take that position. So I'm going to get there. But let's start with from the practitioner standpoint. While each of our listeners should be preparing for this, I'm not sure that it's as imminent as the headlines make it to be.
Okay.
So let's start with that. And so, secondly, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you that there are arguments on both sides of this.
Yes.
And I'm glad you started with the fact that employers have an interest in ensuring that the information they have that is truly proprietary doesn't find itself in the hands of their competitors simply because the competitor will hire the person across the street. I'm Coke, I'm Pepsi. And Pepsi goes in and raids Coke's people to get all of their secrets, the secret recipe. That's real. And companies have a vested interest in protecting themselves from that. So I'm glad you pointed that out. The counter argument is employees need to be able to move freely, right? And work. If I've developed expertise carrying out the Coke and Pepsi as a beverage expert, and I'm working for Coke, if you say I can't work for any other beverage company in America or in the world for the next 10 years, you've effectively made me unemployable. So I literally do see both sides. And I've also spent the first, 3 years of my career fighting one of these very cases. So actually, as a lawyer, I
I'm sorry, on
was,
which side?
I represented the company
Okay.
in the enforcement of non-competes. And I'm just for a second, it'll take me 2 seconds to describe I was at Blockbuster,
Mm.
okay? And at the time, our big competitor was a company called Hollywood Video.
Mm.
Hollywood Video wanted to know the secret sauce to Blockbuster. And a big part of Blockbuster's success was how we chose our real estate.
Mm.
What locations? Because at the end of the day, a video store is a video store. You can provide better service, you can compete on price, but ultimately, location means everything. And we had a secret sauce in determining which intersection in a city, which city, et cetera, would yield the returns that we wanted. So, what did they do? They went and recruited some of our real estate people away.
Mm.
We have invested millions of dollars in across the globe. Remember, Blockbuster was global, determining where the exact location where we knew neighbors were willing to drive this radius to a location. And so we put one location here and one 2.2 miles away on this corner because we had done all of the math, right?
Mm.
Meanwhile, all our competitor needs to do is go hire one of our people. And it didn't need to be the head of real estate for the company. It could actually be a manager level person. It could actually be one of our real estate associates who would have all of this information in their heads. They didn't have to take the files and take back in the day a floppy disk and turn it over to Hollywood Video. It was already in their head. So the day they went to our competitor, they could immediately begin to undermine our business. And we have no way to prove it because they didn't take anything with them. It was all in their head, our proprietary information. Got me? So that's part of why we fought them and we were successful. And it wasn't to put those people out of work, it was to protect our investment. So I think when the FTC rolled out all of their stats, this will generate this much more in this, and they don't also talk about the other side, what it will cost industry by potentially, and I lived through this personally, having a competitor compete unfairly by recruiting your people away and taking all of your intellectual and proprietary.
Right. So part of what I think about with this, Johnny, is, and again, this is a tricky thing for me because you're the lawyer and I'm not, is there's this is proprietary, but is it material?
Yeah, think about, as I just told
I
you.
know which brand of copiers that company uses. Well, but who cares? Like, I don't care. But
That's
hey, I know how these guys pick their retail locations, and that's the unlock to their strategy. That's a
Yep.
completely different thing.
So you just nailed the issue, and that's where I was going to go on my final point on that. And that is, that being said, employers abused this, hands down. We were making a cook in a restaurant, a McDonald's cook versus a high-end five-star Michelin restaurant. They're both cooks, but one cook has the recipe to a souffle that the competitors would love to have. That person might rightly be subject to a non-compete. Whereas the person who works at a McDonald's, there's no secret. You're working on the front. So that was the problem, is they made everyone sign them. And we didn't enforce. So the enforcement was, if you dare to go across the street to work at a McDonald's or Burger King, problem. That's what has caused this. So I'm going to own this. Employers decided to lock everyone down, which I think created a problem. And so I see both sides of it, my friend. Where we land on it, SHRM, is the overall blanket. And I feel this way about most things. Everything is nuanced,
Right.
especially when it comes to an employment context. So a blanket rule prohibiting all non-competes, even up to the executive levels, that's insane. It doesn't make sense to me. What they, in my opinion, humble opinion, and what SHRM's point of view is on this, is that what we should have done is said, here's the conditions, here are the parameters around certain jobs, and it's not limited to title, pay, whatever, but certain jobs, if you have access to highly proprietary confidential information, the company they should pay you for it, but they should be able to prevent you from going to a direct competitor within reason, period. And the FTC, basically, companies overreacted, and I've got too broad by extending non-competes to everyone. And the FTC went the other way and overreacted. I think overcorrected is a better way, and now said it's the Wild Wild West. Let me just say this because I want you to react to this. Here's what no one's factoring in. Assuming this became the law of the land, let's talk about it. Would you, Bob, in your business, career club, you had some secret sauce, and I know you have some approaches, your sales, however you do what you do. Would you hire someone to do it, or would you consider just outsourcing it? Because if you have an outsourced partner, you can contractually, that's a non-employee, you can make them sign a non-disclosure. You can get the protections by outsourcing it. I worry that a lot of employers are going to say, tell you what, one, I'm either not going to share anything with my employees, so much for transparency, so much for being, in the relationship with your employees. I'm just not going to share it, limit it to a very few people, or I'm just going to outsource this to an organization. I can get a non-compete from an organization. I can't get it from an employee.
But here's where I'm struggling is if I feel like almost everything that you described would be covered by a non-disclosure agreement. That
Go ahead.
Okay, so trade secrets, stuff like that for a period of time, like that all makes total sense to me. And if that blockbuster, and I might be building on an egregious example. So, but if that blockbuster employee went to Hollywood Video, and abided by a non-disclosure agreement for 12 months or 24 months or whatever, now they probably wouldn't get hired, but you know, but
That's the
say that they did, and they're like, Johnny, I can't tell you this. That I signed something that said I would not talk about this. I'm happy to help you guys do whatever within your strategy. Like I get real estate, I know how to do contracts, I know how to pick a location, but I can't tell you how Blockbuster does it because that puts me in jeopardy. Like that's a non-disclosure agreement, but I'm still welcome to go work in because I could double click and say, forget Hollywood Video. Isn't that now retail? I mean, aren't we just basically talking about retail? And you can't work in retail for some
no,
period of time.
we didn't say that. We said you can't work in video retail. But anyway, come on, Bob.
Disclosure, non-disclosure. That's really the nut of the issue. And then
You think people honor those? Let's have that
but
conversation.
listen, but now they're creating personal liability for themselves. That's their choice.
They don't have any money. If you sue them, you can't get it back. And if they've divulged your proprietary information, the damage to you is irreparable. That's the point of saying, I'm going to prevent you from being there so that there's no
So I'm
chance.
just going to cut your arm off because I'm afraid you might cut your finger. It's like
Or
that's what I'm
that you
saying. The cure is worse than the disease.
is it? Is it?
Yes, because of the broad application of non-competes. I flipping work at Great Clips, and you're telling me that I can't go work at Supercuts
No, I
within
just, in certain roles, again, I'm agreeing with you that it got too broad. But
yes,
I am saying there are people at Great Clips, depending upon what they were exposed to in their job, should not be allowed to immediately go work for Supercuts. I think that's my argument is that if the broad give everyone a non-compete, very bad employers, bam, you shouldn't have done that. The other overbroad side that says no employee, you can't protect your information. There are real, if you are, I do think that Great Clips and who'd you say Supercuts, whatever,
Supercuts.
think there are certain employees who are exposed to certain information at Great Clips should not be allowed to go work, at least at a minimum, in the radius. So what we used to say is non-competes are enforceable, except for in California, provided they are reasonable in scope, geography, right? You can narrowly
Duration.
right, you can narrowly tailor it, but to go to the opposite side, which is no one can do it. Why would I
I,
put
I
that much of my information in
Okay,
someone's?
so I mean, just being reasonable, that makes sense. Where I really struggle, and we see this every day at Career Club, working with people who, oftentimes are people who've been laid off and have to go
Right,
find a new career, and
right.
they are worried to death that this blanket non-compete that they signed, like I can't work in a very broad industry because they've got lawyers, I don't, and now all of a sudden I'm putting my life at risk, my financial life at risk, by even considering applying to companies that I know would value my expertise. I have no intention of sharing trade secrets. I don't even know if I know any trade secrets, but these guys now have my hands tied behind my back that I can't work in the industry I've worked in for XD years. That,
Can I say something though?
huh?
When you took that job, see, part of this whole conversation and your argument is now they're holding me to it. When you took the job, you knew it. Most people are given non-competes before accepting the job. So guess what, Bob? You shouldn't have gone to a company that tells you that there's going to be a non-compete. You did negotiate that as a part of your deal. No one made you work there. Just being provocative, right? Let's be honest.
Provocative, I'm not sure practical
No,
because
no, it's very practical. If right now I said I wanted to go work for the competitor of SHRM, let's use that. Let's just use that. Do you think my board's going to take real? Now, I know everything about our strategy. I know our competitor. Like, come on,
and
you
I'm
don't think
talking about a director of client service in 1,000-person company, not the
so? You
CEO
and
of
I
a
are
large.
now agreeing. We're agreeing. Scope. So we're both saying the same thing. I think we've arrived at it. Saying no non-competes is not a good idea. Saying non-compete on everyone is not a good idea. But you began to say duration, reasonable. I think the real answer, if I were at the FTC, would be, Let's figure out how we narrowly tailor it. Both
Yes.
sides overcorrected. When you say no one essentially can get a non-compete,
Well,
what
I
then
don't think
how?
the FTC is even saying that, aren't they? Aren't they saying like if you make this certain amount of money or you're some kind of a senior executive, you're still can be held to one of these, but for rank and file employees, isn't that mostly
And
what they're
that's
saying?
yes, except that's they took almost, my opinion, the lazy view. So certain salary. I just told you that a rank and file real estate person has a lot of information. In fact, arguably more than some senior executives in that organization when it comes to real estate. So that's the issue.
Comp
Is
is a
there's
poor proxy.
I'm sorry,
Compensation is a poor proxy.
title, compensation. There are whole. I just talked about a chef at a very high end restaurant who has the secret, literally the secret sauce. That should be protectable, even if that person is working in a restaurant, right? Do you
Yeah,
follow what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying companies, it's the lazy approach is certain titles, certain salaries. No, we should be able to look at the job. Now, what I would have done also, if I were Mr. FTC commissioner, is I would have said, and you got to be crystal clear with people on the way in that this is a term and condition of the job, and you've got to give them compensation for the period that you want them not to work for a
Yes.
computer. So now, so that's what they could have done, but instead, whoop.
So it's interesting doing a little bit of prep for this episode that we're doing right now. I said, well, what goes on in other countries? And like in the UK, I think it was the UK, they have to do 30% of your
Right,
comp. So when I alluded to like garden leave earlier,
right,
like
totally.
I'm going to pay you to be quiet. It's worth it to me for you go garden, go to the beach, go do whatever you're going to go do. Right.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's exactly it. We went way past that. We're like, it doesn't matter how much you pay the person, they get to go. Come on. You now make it really difficult for me as the employer, especially as I start. And remember, where work really gets done in our organizations is oftentimes at the manager and director level, at the senior specialist. Think about the programmer at OpenAI, who the group of them who were working on that technology. No, they weren't Sam Altman or they weren't the top of the food chain, but they knew exactly how this thing was being designed, what its flaws, or they knew
Yeah.
everything. So that's what I mean. There's no there. It should have been more narrowly tailored. Now, what I'm hoping comes out of this is the court ultimately helps us narrowly tailor it and says, let's do something that is good for business, but also protects the rights of employees. Because that is it's not lost on me. And
Right.
SHRM, workers and the workplace, we do want employees not to be unfairly hampered from earning a living.
Yeah.
Got it. But I'm just not sure. You asked the question, is the FTC's response? And when we talk about this all the time, is it a shovel or an axe instead of to kill a fly? Like, I just think it went way too far.
What do you think? I feel like I'm harping on this point, but if you were in that negotiation trying to like put a finer point on this thing, if you're laid off, you're terminated, but not for cause. Do you think that would be some kind of an exception or should be factored into it?
Nope, nope. If I'm going to pay you to come out of market, it doesn't matter. I don't care why you don't work here anymore. Uh, and part of that is because the laid off or terminated person is the person I especially want to be protected because they could be pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
They are likely to be pissed off. They could have a vendetta. So I'm going to go to your competitor. I'm going to specifically apply and I'm going to tell them everything. And I'm not going to take files so you can't prove it when you talked about non-disclosure. That's an honor system thing because if you don't put it in writing, take files, I have no way to know. So I'm actually more concerned about the person who's laid off than the person who just left
Oh my
voluntarily.
gosh, I understand where you're coming from, but my goodness, that in the court of public opinion, that would be extremely tough. I took away
Pay them
I took away your employment, but I'm
and
also
pay
telling you where else you can't work. What?
Listen, there are there are 38 million, whatever the number is, of companies in America. I'm saying these are the 10 you can't work
Fair enough.
geography. So guess what? And I'm going to pay you not to do it.
Okay, no, but see that I'm down for everything you just said because none of that is what it really looks like today. So if it gets,
Listen, it depends. So generally speaking, you're right. But what it will look like in September, I'm suggesting to you, is worse.
yeah, well, it's
If,
certainly
if,
another bad result. And again, I think you and I are agreed that point A and or point B, there's a lot of good ground in between those two places that hasn't been properly explored. It sounds
and
like.
I'm surprised because the FTC took public opinion, they talked to employers, they talked to us, and we said the answer is maybe not in the center, maybe it's a little left, whatever it is, but it's not to the extreme because that's not practical for business. Again, I use example, and I'm going to stay away from Blockbuster since many of your audience may not even remember it. But let's go fast forward to the Career Club or to SHRM, my day job. There are employees right now who are working in my exam certification group. I'm going to use that. Not in management, et cetera, not making a ton of money, comfortable living wages, but not. And right now they know the 150 questions that we're going to use for the next SHRM certification exam. Do you think I want them going across the street to a competitor with that question, with those questions in their head?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I should, as an employer, be able to protect that intellectual property. Your point is, well, if they go, then sue them. Let me tell you how that works, especially if that person doesn't have any assets. So I'm going to spend a ton of money. You're right. I do have lawyers, but I'm going to have to pay for them and I'm going to spend a ton of money and I may get a judgment, but it's not a judgment I can collect on. And meanwhile, I've still lost 150 highly, highly valuable questions.
The flaw in that logic for me is guilty until proven innocent. So I'm just going to assume that you're guilty. I'm going to assume that you are going to betray the legal contract that you signed upon employment at SHRM, where you said you won't do this. But since I don't believe you really are going to honor that contract, I'm just going to assume that you're guilty. And therefore, I'm going to exact a penalty on you so that you can't work and do. Now, I think limiting to extremely direct competitors, very specific kinds of disclosures that you can and cannot make. And if we're going to compensate, I don't want to lose that point. Like, hey, I'm not asking you to do this totally on your own dime. I will basically supplement you for a period of time, right? Basically, as an insurance policy. So, like, I'm pretty okay with that. But this sort of general notion that people sign contracts that they have no intention of honoring, to me, is basically guilty until proven innocent.
And it's fact. The reality is we know over time you'd like to think that overwhelmingly people are honorable. When it comes to the employment context, it has historically been management versus employee, both sides owning some of this.
Right.
So while I don't know what the percentages are, let me tell you, there are a significant number of people who will steal, especially if they were laid off or fired, who are pissed off and they don't act rationally. So what we're trying to do is to prevent us a headache and you from even being able to give us a headache. Now, I've already acknowledged and conceded, counselor, that compensation, it should be limited, etc. But yes, I make the assumption that my job is to protect this company's assets, and you took the job knowing that I was going to protect the asset and I was going to expose you to proprietary information. In fact, you signed a document up front saying it, and you understood. You act as if people just threw you into a non-compete. You took the job knowing that you had a non-compete. Now, I'm just asking you to honor it, provided I pay you for that period of time. Then I don't get it. I just maybe.
For me, the big variable in this is, and I'm paying you.
Yes.
Okay. That I've been doing this for a while. I have not encountered anybody that says, and oh, by the way, Bob, they are, except in financial services, where
Yes.
garden leave is a pretty standard thing, particularly for, as you say, like people that know how the model works,
Right.
kind of stuff. Totally get it. What our trading strategy is, all that stuff. In the regular day-to-day world of client service manager at XYZ company, I haven't seen that. If that becomes reality, then I am, way closer to being signed up for what we're talking about.
And that to me is that's the problem the FTC should have solved for. Is as opposed to a broad, we're not going to allow any of this to be enforced. How about figuring out how to ensure that the employees are protected so that there's a balancing of leverage?
Yes.
That's what we should have. That's right. The Federal Trade Commission, like they're trading their services, we're paying for it. That to me is what I was hoping they would have solved for. And no problem. If you say you let go someone, you want them to sign a non-compete and be out of the market for 6 months so that whatever's in their head goes stale. Perfect. We're going to pay employer. You're going to have to pay for that because this person can't be forced to sit on the sidelines for no pay. And they could have done some really interesting things. Johnny, if you leave here, I'm going to pay you 6 months to stay out of the market. If you go to a competitor, if you go to a non-competitor, I stop the pay because I shouldn't pay.
Fair enough.
But there are sorts of ways to do this. Instead, they're generally this applies to like 98% of the U.S. workforce.
Yes.
If it goes into effect, that's a lot.
Okay. So maybe, is there anything else you want to say? Because I want to put a bow on this.
No, I think, but I think we are more in agreement than disagreement because I'm so honored that we see both sides of this. The employer has some risk in this. Yeah. The employee has significant risk in it. How about we just try to de-risk it for both sides, but not what we did now?
Okay, so the way I want to end this one is I think this is such a good example of how to have a civil conversation.
Loving that.
Right? Yeah, and for those of you who aren't familiar, who are listening, SHRM is a year-long initiative, Johnny, to foster 1 million civil conversations in the workplace. And here's something that, is clearly a hot button issue that we both have strong, I think both, opinions, but informed points of view on, and that there's merit in both sides. And you don't have to be ugly to explore an issue and try and understand it from the other person's point of view. And so, I don't know if you want to pick up on that point for half of a second, but I just love the whole idea of civil conversations, right? Mature adult people can talk about an issue that they don't see eye to eye on necessarily and still be friends.
You said it better than I could. Absolutely. That's the essence of it. And what I love, you can't say our diversity is our strength and then not want diverse perspectives. You can't, right? So you and I should be able to disagree and go out and enjoy and argue. I remember at one point I heard you in here, you said, I just think you're wrong or something like that. And I didn't get out of it because you have a right to believe I'm wrong. And I don't, but you don't think, Johnny, you're a bad person. I just think your idea is wrong. That's what we've got to work on. And this is a classic example. We should talk on another, we got a lot to talk about, but in particular, this conversation, not just civility, but the ability to disagree is a big deal.
Yes, I love it. Well, duly noted. We'll pick that one up. And in the meantime, WorkWire listeners, thank you so much for dialing in and spending a few minutes with Johnny and me. If you've got comments or points of view on this issue or anything else that we cover on the WorkWire, we would love to hear from you. But in the meantime, Johnny, great to see you and look forward on the next WorkWire episode. Thanks, everybody.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit shrm.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.